Midoriya's bout with 1A comes to an end, we get to see the new and improved UA high school, and Bakugo confesses his true feelings to Midoriya. Let's talk about all of this and more as we dive right into the newest chapter of My Hero Academia. So My Hero Academia Chapter 322 is finally out, and with it, the fight, if you can even call it that, between the masterful monstrous Midoriya and the ever-persistent Class 1A comes to its thrilling conclusion. And oh boy, does this one pull on the heartstrings. Somebody better grab those tissues because just like Mama Midoriya after witnessing her baby boy do absolutely anything, it's about to get emotional. In this chapter, 1A proves to Midoriya that they can keep up, more members of the class confront Midoriya about leaving UA, and Bakugo tells his childhood friend the truth about their friendship. But before I begin talking about this chapter, I'm first going to go into a quick summary of what happened last time. And as usual, don't forget to Detroit smash that like button and slide into that subscribe button's DMs to hit that notification bell. In the last chapter, Class 1A continued their hot pursuit in tracking down and bringing home the green mean bean Izuku Midoriya. Todoroki tried to reason with our now vicious protagonist boy and started to spit out straight facts about how him not working with 1A makes no logical sense. But Midoriya, being classic Midoriya, merely responded with, "Screw the logic, I have one for all." Froppy then tried to tongue Izuku and failed, and then Mineta apparently also tried to tongue Midoriya, sending the entire MHA fandom into an absolute frenzy. It was a fucking shit show. Uraraka then jumped into this attempted gangbang to retrieve her man. Unfortunately for her, Midoriya wasn't having any of it, and instead, he yeeted himself into the upper atmosphere to avoid the one person he canonically has romantic interests in. Uraraka refusing to let Izuku get away tells the rest of Class 1A to get it done, and together, using all of their quirks at full power, they manage to rocket their class rep, former exit sign Tenya Ida, up to his best friend, where he held hands with Midoriya and reiterated the words Izuku once told him. Messing where you're not supposed to is the essence of a true hero. And this is where Chapter 322 picks up. This chapter opens up exactly where the last chapter left off, with Ida and Midoriya still airborne clasping hands and rocketing through the skies. Midoriya, now coming to terms with what just happened, tries to let go of Ida's hand, but his narration informs us that even though he wants to let go, he can't muster the strength to do so. No longer able to resist his friend's desperate pleas to come home, Midoriya falls into Ida's arms, accepting his friend's wishes. In seeing this, Uraraka releases her quirk, which immediately causes the two airborne heroes to plummet towards the ground, which seems like a very strange plan, considering Midoriya is practically unconscious and Ida's quirk isn't really a flight-based ability, which means that Izuku and Ida are basically plummeting towards their death. Hey, maybe Ochako just couldn't handle seeing Midoriya wrapped in another person's arms. But yes, as Ida and Midoriya begin to fall, Ida realizes that he may not be able to land safely. However, as he is rapidly descending, he notices that Hardboy Kirishima has spotted the two and is preparing to catch them. Ida and Midoriya then crash into Kirishima at an insane speed, causing all three of them to get blasted backwards a good distance up the street. However, Kirishima remains strong and sturdy, and just manages to keep himself upright, safely catching his two classmates. With Midoriya now in his arms and finally being face to face with his friend, Kirishima tells Midoriya that when he was in middle school, he heard the story of a quirkless kid his age who rushed in to save his friend from a villain. Kirishima goes on to exclaim that he knows that that kid was Midoriya, and Kirishima tells him that being a hero has nothing to do with being special or strong. Really being a hero is being like that kid who would rush out into unknown danger just for the chance of saving a friend. After Kirishima finishes up talking, Ida, surprised that Kirishima was close by, asks his red-haired classmate what he was doing in the area, to which Kirishima replies that he, Aoyama, and Hagakure were ordered by Endeavor to come and help, and it just happened to be a coincidence that he ended up in the exact spot they were crash landing in. And I mean, thank God Kirishima was there, otherwise Class 1A would have shown up to two of their classmates pancaked into the sidewalk. Speaking of Class 1A showing up, that's exactly what they do, as the rest of the class all make their way to the crash site. Mina Ashido steps forward and tells Midoriya that he's done enough of this being alone stuff, and it's time he comes back to UA so they can all have classes together again. again. Hearing this, Midoriya steps forward and tells Mina that he would love to go back to UA, but it's just too dangerous for him to return and he doesn't want to cause trouble for all the people held up there. Bakugo then steps forward and he asks Midoriya if he remembers what he told him after he got stabbed by Shigaraki, to which Midoriya replies that he doesn't. Bakugo then proceeds to repeat the words, saying, "Don't even think about winning this alone." Following this, the Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite begins to explain himself to Midoriya. He says that after yelling those words out, his body began to move on its own. He knew he was impaled, but he needed Midoriya to hear those words. Bakugo goes on to say that he always looked down on Midoriya because he was quirkless. Yet, it wasn't because Midoriya was miles behind him, but because he knew that even without a quirk, somehow Midoriya was miles ahead of him. Bakugo explains that he hated that feeling of being so far behind someone, and he didn't want to acknowledge it, so he grew distant from his friend and tried to beat him down. However, no matter how hard he opposed Midoriya or tried to show his superiority over him, he kept losing. And when they got into UA, it only became more and more clear how much he was losing by. And following this, Bakugo says that it probably doesn't mean anything telling you this now, but that's what I really think. And as Bakugo lowers his head, he says, "Izuku, I'm sorry for everything I've done up until now." Holy shit! Now there is a hell of a lot to break down from this scene. Firstly, holy crap, I was not expecting this at all. Bakugo not only admitting his flaws and fears to Midoriya, but full on apologizing to him in front of the entirety of Class 1A, may I remind you, is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, my god, did this moment get me. I honestly don't think I can put into words how much this blew my mind. I'm more shocked over this than the One For All would kill quirk users reveal. God damn, does Horikoshi know how to write his characters? Secondly, as Bakugo is about to begin his speech, we see him face to face with a now zombie and dead looking Midoriya. But when he starts to speak, we see both him and Midoriya still face to face as little kids. And as he continues, we slowly see them change from kids to middle schoolers to UA students, all the way back up to where they are now. Which is an absolutely fantastic touch on its own, but as they progress through the ages and Bakugo keeps talking, the light in Midoriya's eyes slowly fades back in, showing us that Bakugo's words are striking true and are bringing Midoriya back. God, it's so beautiful! And thirdly, I have to point out that Bakugo calls Midoriya Izuku, not Deku, which is not only the first time he has called him Izuku since they were really young kids, but it also shows that Bakugo fully respects Midoriya, as one of Bakugo's character traits is only calling people by their real name if he sees them as an equal. But continuing on, as Bakugo has his head bowed, he continues talking, telling Midoriya that the path he took and the decisions he made as One For All's successor weren't a mistake, as they are the exact same decisions their hero All Might made and would have made in the same situation. However, he informs Midoriya that ideals can only get you so far on their own, and all he needs to do to understand this is to take a look at himself, as he can barely stand on his own. And to finish off this speech, Bakugo says that if he ever finds himself in trouble, he can always count on all of them for help, and that the only way he will ever be able to surpass All Might is if he and all of the others protect UA together. After hearing all of this, Midoriya tries to step forward and speak, but his fatigue finally catches up to him, and he begins to fall. But before he can hit the ground and before he fully passes out, Bakugo catches him, and Izuku says that he is sorry for telling them that they couldn't keep up. To which Bakugo replies, "I know." Dear lord, the Bakudeku shippers are going to have a field day with this chapter. Also, I should point out that after hearing Bakugo's speech, Deku thinks to himself how everyone else is so far ahead of him. With Deku now unconscious and in their possession, Class 1A prepares for the next part of their plan, which Momoya Yorozu claims will only get more difficult from here on out. The story then cuts away, and it returns with Deku regaining his consciousness and opening his eyes to see UA and the black hole hero number 13, who's not wearing her helmet. 13 tells Deku that almost all of the civilians have been moved to various evacuation centers, and that the ones remaining outside are mostly groups of anti-hero protesters or extremists that have gone wild alongside the jailbreakers. She goes on to say that Deku's solo journey actually really helps the heroes and the police in keeping everyone safe, as they were being overwhelmed by the amount of people that needed help. And as 13 finishes up, we got our first glance at the new UA barrier, which now makes UA look like a giant ass fortress. Seriously, this place looks more like a prison than Tartarus ever did. Zero comments that this is just a taste of what it can actually do, and Hagakure mentions that when the system is activated, it can even connect to Shiketsu High. As they begin to approach the school entrance, Deku begins to worry about him returning to UA, and he's not the only one, as a bunch of civilians who have gathered near the school entrance cry out that they don't want Midoriya anywhere near them. The group shout out that they know Deku's the person Shigaraki is going after, and that the principal guaranteed they'd be safe. Yet, now they are stuck in a place with what they call a ticking time bomb. Hearing all of the people protesting his return, Deku starts to walk away. But before he can go, Uraraka grabs his hand, stops him, and tells him everything will be alright. And with this, chapter 322 comes to an end, as Uraraka brings Midoriya back towards UA as she thinks to herself how they can't let go of Midoriya ever again. And she repeats the line in her head, who will save heroes when they are the ones in trouble? Overall, this was not surprisingly another fantastic chapter. Kirishima getting to have a few words with Deku at the start was great to see, and I'm glad he got his little moment. Seeing UA turned into a giant fortress was a surprise, and a big improvement from their previous security barrier, a gate. Getting to see Deku look like his adorable little self again put my serotonin levels through the roof, and having Uraraka be the one to hold his hand and reassure him that they want him there was the perfect amount of interaction to keep the Ochako x Deku shippers happy. But the main draw of this chapter was undoubtedly Bakugo's confession and apology to Midoriya. Bakugo's character arc has finally come full circle, and it will be really interesting to see what happens with not only the character now, but with how he interacts with Izuku. Also, I want to mention, I love the way that Ida was the only one who could bring Midoriya back, but Bakugo was the only one who could make him stay. I'm sure after this apology, a lot of people's opinions on Bakugo will change, which will be an interesting development. But all real Bakugo fans know, if you can't handle him at this, then you don't deserve him at this. But let me know what you think of this chapter. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment what you think is going to happen next. For more My Hero content, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Plus Ultra.